Hidden Object Guru here, joined by
The Unabridged Game.
ready to talk some more Clone Wars, which I'm seeing for the first time, and the Unabridged Gamer has a very,
Unhealthy
very
amount of knowledge
intense, a
about.
very intense personal relationship with, unhealthy obsession with. We're gonna let history be the judge on that one. I'm not gonna provide any kind of a ruling on that one. So yes, we've already talked about the original animated series. We have talked about the movie, and we have talked about season 1. So now we're jumping into season 2. I have a list of episodes here, just like in the previous seasons. This is going to be mostly story arcs. There are very few solo episodes. And in fact, they managed to do a more interesting job of integrating the solo theme episodes with the overarching plots this season than they did the previous season, where you can do an episode that continues the story arc while focusing entirely on one specific factor of the story and a different group of characters. In this case, the standout on that front is the Deserter, but we'll talk about that as we go.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so first up, we have the Holocron Heist Trilogy.
Cad Bane is back, mothers.
Oh, he's such a fun character.
Yeah, there is one. I have to offer one fan nitpick that's weird.
Okay.
So the woman who can transform into various things, the changeling.
Yeah. Is that
I don't
that's a
know.
holographic thing, right?
Yeah, that's not how it works for their species. They
Oh.
biologically change. I don't know why they
Oh.
needed to be a hologram for the TV show. Like, even in the new lore, it's still... No, really, they can just change into that.
Oh, weird. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I thought it was just a machine she had.
yeah, I don't know what the deal is. It was...
They're in the lore, they're actual changelings, not just people with a
Oh,
holo
yeah,
screen.
that's why Zam goes from looking like a human to looking like her actual true self in Attack of the Clones.
Clones. Okay.
Yeah, so that is the exact same species, and they've featured in a number of other stories and things. In fact, they kind of have a notoriety amongst the
I
galaxy
honestly
because...
didn't even realize that was supposed to be the same species. Because this one was using a hologram. Like, I guess it kind of looked the same, and she's got that helmet thing that that Zan had in Attack of the Clones. But I didn't make the connection because it was a hologram generator she was using.
Yeah,
Weird.
it's weird. And also, the other notable thing that's more just amusing is Seth Green is here as a prelude to his canceled Star Wars TV show that was supposed to happen that never
Yeah, I
did.
listened to the Wacky Robot, and I'm like, is that Seth Green? I think that's Seth Green.
He pops up a remarkable amount of times in the show. Like, apparently he and George Lucas just really hit it off at some point, and that's how Star Wars Detours almost happened, and
Well, you
how
say
he ended up...
almost happened. They did make it.
That is true, they did make
Every
it.
single piece of footage of every episode of Star Trek Detours got made. It just never came out. Like, that's the weird part. It wasn't canceled. Like, they did do it. He just never aired it anywhere. There's 40 episodes of Star Trek Detours that got made, that everyone got paid for making, that just is sitting on a hard drive somewhere deep in LucasArts. It's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah, well, Lucasfilm is very keen on, well, if Disney didn't sign off on it, it no longer exists.
Ugh. So frustrating.
But,
Especially when we get this little, when they're like, we're going to the underworld. Yes, I know he wants to do, at this point, we want to do the Star Wars Underworld TV show. But spoiler alert, that's not going to happen.
yeah, that's actually, that was a big issue with Star Wars at this era. The weird thing is, it was a conflict essentially between people who had really creative ideas, like even beyond the Clone Wars, people with very creative ideas that could have potentially done what the MCU is doing now with
Yeah.
Star Wars. Like, for comparison, Star Wars Battlefront 3 was supposed to actually be how General Kota was introduced. He wasn't originally meant just for The Force Unleashed. He was going to be there as one of the main players for a significant portion of the campaign, and then he'd appear in The Force Unleashed and potentially appear in other things. And on the same
Weird.
turn, the Clone Wars was supposed to also, have some references to Underworld, and also there was 1313. If there had been the permission to just be able to do this stuff and really flex the muscles of the property, we could have had all of this very interconnecting stuff. But instead, because things kept getting delayed and or canceled due to various shenanigans that had nothing to do with the properties themselves, it ended up being that you have this scatter shot of what could have been.
And that's fascinating because when I saw the reference to, Coruscant's Underworld, I'm like, I know what this is a reference to, the TV show that didn't get made. It got me thinking about how, like, if they had just, it seemed like the Underworld and the Underworld TV show, 1313, and the Clone Wars all tying together, along with Battlefront 3 and Force Unleashed, like, as you pointed out, it could have been them doing a better version of what they tried to do with Shadows of the Empire.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
like
yeah,
and that would have been so, amazing.
Well, it's staring you right in the face, and
yeah,
it just
it's frustrating. It is frustrating. But anyway, let's focus on Cad Bane, who's wonderful.
Oh my gosh. I love that someone who isn't Force sensitive makes the rest of the Jedi Order, because they just keep posturing and being doofs for a lot of Season 1, and then it's like, hey, what if there was a consequence for you guys being so pretentious that you think that no one could possibly break in?
Yeah. That was pretty wonderful. Well, and that's the thing. It's like there is, and that's a theme we get with the Jedi over and over again, there really is an arrogance at the heart of being a Jedi. Like, there really is. These are arrogant people who believe themselves and their system to be largely infallible. And I like that. I like that they're like, no, like, the Jedi have problems too. If they were perfect, none of this would have happened. Like, there really is a consequence to their blinkered worldview, and that's one of the things I really respect about how the show is handling. It's like, these guys make mistakes. They make a lot of mistakes. And they allowed Cad Bane to sneak in, and as he said, it doesn't even occur to them for a second. Like, they're so arrogant about being the Jedi and being infallible and all being on the same side that it doesn't occur to them that someone could be coming to steal a holocron, because only Jedi can use those. And obviously we're all on the same side, and there's no way to get us to, open a thing. So why could anyone ever want a holocron? It's like, yes, Jedi, why would anyone ever want all of the secrets of the Jedi Order?
Yeah.
They just must be trying to get to our communications array to find out about troop movements. I'm like, dude, no, dude, no.
Oh, and I want to also point out something else that I love, although I sadly think it might be an accident, is just I also love how, Jedi, they have the Force. They can sense people's presence, and yet they don't sense the decoy. They're just so, you're here, you're in the Jedi Temple, how could you possibly be anyone else?
That's
I
true.
would love if that was intentional, because just like, they are not even fully using the power that they have been granted.
It's true, but and it's the assumption. You got that great scene where they go in and Cad Bane figures out that it's like, I'll create an explosion, but then I'll open up a tunnel to make it look like people are running for the communication center, and their instincts and their, assumptions about what must be important here will force them to chase that lead rather than look around. I like that. I think that's very well done. It's a good scene. Yeah, and then of course we get into the chase. They run off. We see a Jedi get murdered. A bunch of babies get stolen, and oh my god, is it so adorbs. Those were unbelievably cute Jedi babies, because we saw Rodian and what is Kit Fisto?
Kit Fisto. I actually am blanking on his species name.
What is his weirdo species name? Because we see one of those too.
Now Tolan.
Gotcha. Okay. We see one of those babies, and honestly, they are like, oh my god, the Rodian's giant eyes are already pretty cute, but when you put that on a baby, Oh my god, that's so fantastic. Oh, I loved that scene. I was a very big fan of that scene. And like, okay, is it just because I'm like crazy for those cute, adorable baby aliens? Yes, that is 100% what it is. But it's a really great sequence, and they have the fight on Mustafar.
Yeah, there's one odd thing about the new timeline in general is that there's this very curious obsession with making Mustafar way more significant than just a random mining planet.
Yeah.
And for what it's worth, the planet does actually have a fairly interesting backstory in both timelines. In essence, it was actually like around the time of Knights of the Old Republic, it would have looked like Alderaan, but because of ecological disaster, it's completely turned into this hellhole. Which I think, actually a rather nice symbolic way of how this is also where Anakin Skywalker, becomes Darth Vader eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, I mean, I will always remember Mustafar because that's where they have their duel and he gets, you know, volcanoized, where it's a brutal death he has, although he only almost dies, because, what do you call it? Obi-Wan can't get the job done. Yeah, I know. So what's nice though, right, in there is you still get it's for however much they're overusing it, as you say, and like trying to say, oh no, it's the planet where every significant thing happens, not just where the separatist happened to hold up that one time, and then Darth Vader killed them all. And then became Darth Vader, and now he has an emotional connection to that planet because it's where he got cut up. So he builds himself a castle there because he has such a close emotional connection to the place. Because in order to remain in the Force, powerful in the dark side of the Force, you kind of have to be angry all the time to fuel your powers.
No, even that's more complicated. The Vader comics have come up with this whole mythology. There was a dead Sith Lord Space Ghost helping him at one point in Moonin. It was... Charles Soule has gone to town on just being like, no, there's all of this stuff going on Mustafar.
Wow.
And then there's
I had assumed he built the castle there just so he's constantly kind of pissed off about where he is.
No, and I think he was actually given the cast... Oh, wait, no, yeah. Okay, I'm not going to go into it. There's a lot of lore that they come up.
Okay, that's something we can address another time.
I
will assume that there is a lot more going on with the castle than I realize.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I got it. All right, so then we move on to Senate Spy, which is the movie Notorious, but in Star Wars for one episode.
Yeah. Like, I like the idea of Padme and Anakin actually having to, address their relationship a bit. It's something that I'm not sure kids were excited for, but, like, we need to see more of that, and also giving her someone that she knew besides Anakin. That is nice to see, especially someone who I think they're trying to set him up as a Kifar, which would be an interesting choice, but they also don't use any of the Kifar's unique species things. They just have the tattoos on the head. The Kifar, Quinlan Voss is one of them. They essentially have psychometry, where if they touch things, they can actually draw memories from it and everything.
Psychometry is what it's called.
Oh, yeah. But they have various stuff like that. They got weird metaphysical things going on that aren't quite on the level of a Jedi, but a few of them have ended up Force sensitive as a result.
Oh, neat. Okay. All right, so there's a bunch more going on there.
Yeah, I was hoping there'd be more for him, but regardless, like, he's well acted and just also...
It's a fun performance. I like the character, and, it's like he's got a bunch of stuff going on. Yes, he's a traitor, but he genuinely loves Padme, and, they're actually doing stuff with the characters that, as you say, not super entertaining for the kids watching, but adults watching the show will appreciate that they're trying to do interesting character work with these people.
Mm-hmm. And Padme actually gets an episode where realistically she gets highlighted as a main character for once. I mean, how often did we get to see that happen before?
Almost never, yeah. It's kind of weird, but for an unbelievably central character to the mythology, it's true she doesn't get a ton to do, except when you get like fan service nods to her dressing like her daughter. Thanks, guys. Oh, she's got a parka this time last season, and it's like, I remember when Princess Leia had a parka. Thanks. But yeah, it was a nice episode. You've got some wonderful heisting. You've got Anakin being jealous. You've got the what do you call it? You've got a still kind of racist depiction of the Trade Federation guys.
Yeah, the Nemoidians.
The Nemoidians are always they're always going to be problematic. That's just a fact.
Yeah, it's a shame too because they don't have to be. And there have been other things that have been like they took baby steps towards fixing it, but this was
that voice, guys.
Yeah,
it's a problem.
Beautiful planet. I even like how the aliens look. Like they actually remind me of the Greys, and stuff like that. Yeah. But goodness me, yes, how they are actually presented as a culture and everything really needs some work.
And of course, we've got the sexy lady robots.
Yeah, that is a weird thing that they took from both in the background of Attack of the Clones and one random comic. There's Agent of the Empire, which was basically, what if James Bond, but he's working for the Empire, but still is kind of a good guy.
Okay.
And he had a sexy-ish robot lady as his sidekick. And
they, of course, in the world of Star Trek, oh my God, sorry. In the world of Star Wars, there are no unique robots, so someone must be out there building hordes and hordes of these sexy lady robots. And so now we see them like acting as chambermaids and guides on planets all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I would say, pretty weird.
Yeah, it's a very odd choice, especially the hair and everything, because even in like Age of the Empire, she doesn't have like the weird hair thing going on. She's got a feminine physique, but that's it. Like,
okay.
There's no benefit to droids having hair.
Yeah, it's a weird choice.
Speaking of droids, can I introduce the next episode?
Please.
Because I have been waiting to talk about this one.
For quite a while, yes.
Landing at Point Rain may, hands down, in my opinion, out of all the Star Wars stories that I've experienced, watched, played, and read, be one of the worst military operations in Star Wars history. And the thing is, the entire emphasis is on the military operation. Like, it's not like there's a lot of...
it's all just Black Hawk Down. There's no extra stuff.
Except it's like Black Hawk Down as written by someone who hasn't even done field research to understand what goes on in a military conflict.
Absolutely.
Like, and why the hell are we going back to Geonosis? Why does this keep being... It got to the point that when Disney Infinity 3.0 came out and they had to do a Clone Wars playset, the developers intentionally have it open with Geonosis, both to get it over with, and have tons of lines that are like, why do we keep having to retake this single planet?
Oh my God.
Because they knew, it's just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Why do we keep coming back to this? And I want to also highlight here, one of my favorite things is not only do they really emphasize that they think that this is the only way to go about the battle, but they go out of their way to show, here's a hologram of the area and what we're going up against. And what it reveals is they're going against the most heavily guarded spot. Yeah. Like, this facility...
They're directly attacking. It's like... And the one line they use to explain it is... oh, well, you told me we weren't going to have to be near this wall. And I'm like, yeah, but you could have attacked, that's a funny joke to try and acknowledge the problem, but really, you could have attacked and landed at any other point, not directly in front of the defense wall.
There's an open field behind the factory! I don't care if you try to say, oh, that's just, the hologram being wrong, or whatever someone would try to hand-wave this away with. It's like, no, they clearly denote that everywhere else is vulnerable. If they landed behind the factory, there's less shields to walk through. They'd be
Yeah.
able to waltz right on up to it, and the defenses would, yet, if anything, maybe send a distraction force up front, then send a spec ops team in the back. Boom! Your entire operation is over in less than an episode's time.
I know.
And this, for me, encapsulates so much of what drives me nuts about this show and everything is that, like, people really love to go on about how its depiction of war is handled and everything, and I just look at this episode and I go, really?
Wow.
Really? Because, like,
Oh.
I mean, I get what the core concept clearly actually is, which is reversed Battle of Hoth. That's really what they're trying to go for here, is reversed Battle of Hoth.
Yeah, of course.
But
Battle of Hoth had a completely logical reason for how all of that stuff was arranged.
oh yeah,
Here's the shield generator. There's intensive shields. There's no way to approach it from the other side because they have to use their machines to approach it, so they have to walk up the field. Like, that makes sense.
yeah, and it just oh my gosh, it. And the other thing that makes it really gratuitous is it also goes in completely the opposite direction of the Tartakovsky series. Because, like, you saw how they took Munilist. They sent in surging troops, and that's just to, stop an uprising on the banking clan's planet. Whereas here, you have a potential resurgence of Geonosis's entire droid foundries, and they basically send in a couple battalions.
Yeah.
It's the most underwhelming response possible. And yes, I know that's probably down to processing power of the actual CGI, but there are ways to get around that.
There are tricks they can do to make that a little more, sensible and plausible and look better. And they just didn't do it. It's not a good looking, it's not a great looking scene, but beyond that, it's just so preposterous that this is what future war looks like. Like, you just don't buy it for a second. And it's unbelievably frustrating.
And the final thing I'll say as another nitpick is, okay, so they have anti-air defenses. Fine. Yeah. Why didn't you go for a very heavily armored ground assault then? Because you then could have swooped in. You didn't have to land that close. Yes, they have artillery, but if you wanted to draw the artillery off, then you send in some fighters to draw people's attention away. Then you can do some stuff like that. And
they're just throwing ground troops at this incredibly defended position in a way that makes no sense. Especially because they're like, what are we going to do about this wall? Yeah, what are we going to do? I keep focusing on the ridiculousness of what are we going to do about this wall, and I'm like, you've got artillery?
Yes!
Like, I've seen you guys in many episodes. I've seen
fire.
You've used artillery so many times in this series already. Maybe just try that.
It's not like it's a complicated thing.
No, we've got to climb a wall and plant explosives on it. I'm like, really? Just planting a bunch of explosives on the top of this giant wall? That's all you need to do to defeat it? Sure, guys. Okay,
also,
fine.
I've just got one last thing to complain about, but it's not war-related for this episode.
Please.
And that is Ki-Adi-Mundi, the guy with the extra brain in his head, who they have along for this mission. He is wasted. Understand, Ki-Adi-Mundi was basically one of the stars of the early Republic comics. Back before The Phantom Menace even came out, he was setting the stage for it. He was one of the central Jedi.
I've seen him in a bunch of things before.
Yeah, he is a big deal in the original expanded universe, and he is nothing here.
Well, he gets knocked out at the start of the story, and then he just stays knocked out for the rest of the story.
Yeah, I legitimately forget that he's in this episode every time before I see it, because, oh yeah, they had Ki-Adi-Mundi for really no clear reason.
Oh. Alright, that's unbelievably frustrating. It is too bad. And then we get, after landing at Point Rain, we get Weapons Factory, which is they're going to attack the Weapons Factory, but they have to deal with the super tanks. And I'm going to ask you a question, right? Because I might be reading into this a little too much. But it seems like a few times a season, they will come up against some terrifying threat. And their answer to that terrifying threat is always, if it's in a cave, collapse the ceiling. If it's on a bridge, blow up the bridge.
Oh
But
yeah,
like they always do this. Like it happens ridiculously frequently that they either blow up a tunnel to trap something or blow up a bridge to make something fall. Like this is like in 2 seasons, and we're only 5 episodes or 6 episodes in the second season. I feel like they've done this 6 times already. Okay, well no, 6 is when they do it to the Beatles in this episode. But the point is, in this one episode, they both either that or it's in the next episode. But the point is, within this group of episodes, they both do the bridge thing and do the cave-in thing, which is the
yeah.
stuff they do all of the time. It's
Well, I mean,
weird to me.
to be fair, they actually do both in this episode because they blow up the
Okay, it
factory
is this
in a
episode, yes.
cave and they blow up the bridge.
That's
Yeah,
what I'm saying.
it's a thing they like to do a lot.
Well,
Yes,
no,
absolutely.
because I watched them so close together, right? It's hard for you to because I watch it in a batch of the whole
Mhm.
arc. It's hard to remember in which episode what thing happened. But yeah,
Oh,
like the fact that they do both in this one episode, it takes my observation about the trick they always do and just brings it that much more into focus. Come on, guys.
yeah. This is again, it's a problem of the whole. Oh, we had to write every episode in 3 to 4 days. Like
That is
that.
kind of crazy. And I know they didn't write the whole episode. They just wrote the outlines and stuff in 3 to 4 days, but it's still pretty bad, guys.
Yeah,
Like they had
it's
to and this is what it's called in writing circles, they had to break the whole season in 3 to 4 days, and that's crazy.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there's also one more notable thing that is unlike the tunnels and bridges, a huge change up. Barriss Ophi is suddenly like 10 years younger.
Oh,
The
really?
Padawan that gets assigned alongside Ahsoka,
Yeah.
yeah, she's supposed to already be a Jedi Knight. In every other bit of canon, she was already working on her own, leading the Medstar Corps as a Jedi healer. And
Oh.
it's like, oh yeah, she's a teenager now, and she's still following Luminara around everywhere, and yeah.
That's weird because you could have just had another character show up.
That is another issue that you have kind of in general. And the thing is, I don't actually hate how they portray Barriss.
Yeah.
Luminara is a bit of an insult because she used to actually be better at sass than Obi-Wan Kenobi in the novels and everything. But
Well, and
Barriss,
and in her first appearance in the cartoon.
yeah, yeah. Whereas Barriss was always meant to be, kind of this reserved person. And there are places they take her in the show that I won't spoil, but I actually think if they had kept her MedStar arc, it would have made for a more meaningful payoff and reasoning for why she does what she does later on in the show.
Okay, well, don't spoil it, but
Oh,
be sure to remind. Be sure, like when we get there, tell me about the MedStar stuff by comparison,
Oh yeah.
because I'm trying to go into this as clean as possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's like it. I don't actually hate what they do with the character. It's just, for one, I don't know why they had to de-age her so much and also make her not be a Jedi Knight. It was just a really weird thing. Like,
That is a strange choice.
and to this day, it's kind of like even the community is kind of stuck on, okay, were they trying to ship Ahsoka and Barriss? Because they could have just had Barriss stand in as like a big sister role instead.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a head scratchy thing, but by comparison to everything at Landing at Point Rain, it's a minor footnote for me. It's like, okay, at least she's got a really good actress portraying her, and at least she gets to do things and be
That's
a
true.
presence.
She gets a lot of action, and especially when we get to the wonderful zombie episode, because there's a zombie episode.
I already told you that there's a Godzilla episode, so yeah.
I know. I really enjoyed the Godzilla episode. Spoiler alert.
But
We'll talk about how little sense it makes in a second, but I really enjoyed it.
I will
But
say,
yeah, let's wrap up the zombie plot line. They meet the queen of the Geonosians, who is very unreasonable to deal with, and it turns out that she uses Wrath of Khan style brainworms to control people. But luckily, the brainworms are easily killable, so you got that going for us.
yeah, I want to add that I do, out of the various scenes, because we've already said James Arnold Taylor is a treasure as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I love when he's asking about Anakin where he thinks the worm is going to go in.
I know! That's such a good moment. I'm betting nose. Here.
It just is like that is legitimately one of the funniest moments in the
Yeah.
show. Though I will say it's kind of the creative team behind this has been very weird about how they've handled the Geonosians over the years, because
Yeah.
they're made out like horrifying monsters in this. Then they kind of took a different approach for Rebels, and then one of the Vader comics tried to do something else again. They can't seem to decide, are these just, are we just going to make them be these horrifying monsters,
Yeah.
or are we going to address them as actually a people? But the Clone Wars is like, oh gosh, these things are freaking scary.
They
Just
are.
rip them all, make them gone, flamethrowers all around.
I know. I was so blown away because violence is generally. I mean, it's not hugely sanitized on this show, but it's not. It's not bleak for the most part, right? But then suddenly
Oh.
it's like thinking, feeling, talking aliens. To see them all being flame thrown is kind of jarring.
Oh yeah, and dismembered and everything. I remember at the time, as a teenager, I was like, okay, so we're actually going to start treating at least this part of the warfare. We're acknowledging this is a bit yikes and intense.
But yeah, it's like there's this switch that goes in people's heads where if it's a bug, it's okay. And it doesn't matter how realistic and, again, evolved, obviously sentient, having language those bugs are. If it's a bug, we're allowed to step on it. Seems to be the rationale in this episode. Because it's
Yeah,
so brutal what they do to these Geonosians.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I was kind of shocked. I will admit that. Yeah, I mean, I still I enjoyed that they were willing to go that far, but just largely, I was kind of shocked to see that kind of brutality on the show.
mhm.
Yeah, it was a little iffy. But
And
anyway, so yeah,
uh,
fun though.
yeah, and the culmination of this with the brain invaders,
Yeah,
it's goofy as hell, but I at least appreciate that it manages to be useful for another thing, even if the actual horror elements are crazy, which is an exploration of the kind of situation you'd be looking at in Order 66, because we're finally seeing Jedi have to fight the people that they've been fighting alongside all of this time. And
yeah,
that is a clever way of giving you an insight of just how much conflict someone would be having in that without it being explicitly being Order 66.
yeah. We're gonna have to talk a lot more about Order 66 because there's an episode coming up that you know really makes me question it once again. Like, because again, how much of this is mind? Like, I don't. Everything about the clones tells me they're not mind controlled. Like they
Yeah.
don't seem like the way they're treated in this show suggests that there has been almost no brainwash. I mean, there is brainwash. We can talk about how living in a militarized society where proto-fascistic, you exist only as a weapon to be used against the enemies of the clan, blah 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 stuff. Right? You can talk about how that is a kind of brainwashing, but what I'm saying is these guys are only brainwashed to the extent that they were raised since children to fight and die for a cause. And to suddenly say, oh, by the way, it's time to kill every single member of, like, every single general you have, it seems like, something you would have to be more mechanically brainwashed to do. But again, we're going to talk about that later.
Oh yeah.
So first off, a little bit in a second actually, we get to Grievous Intrigue.
I always
Where
forget this episode exists.
I get that. Yeah, we have Grievous, General Grievous shows up, and I'm like, are they going to remember that he doesn't have emphysema yet? Are they going to remember that he doesn't have emphysema yet? And nope, they didn't. He still does the coughing thing.
Oh, it's
The coffin robot.
the coffin robot captures Eth Koth.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, I don't know why Eth Koth, like it's very explicit. Eth Koth has been kidnapped, and it's like, look, guys, I know about a lot of the Jedi from this era. Eth Koth wasn't that memorable, as far as I recall. I don't know why we're making this big deal out of him. Like, I would understand if it was Quinlan Voss. That would make so much sense. But
Yeah, but
okay.
this guy, maybe not so much.
It's,
Maybe,
it
yeah,
is
I'm just not that
I'm
impressed.
it is like, there's lots of fun action
Oh
that
yeah,
they have, but this is a textbook definition of what this creative team does for a filler episode. It's like, there's a thing that we need to be worried about because quick reason. All right, action.
yeah. Let's go and have a bunch of fights over it. Done. Okay. Let's move on. And it is a little bit of use of General Grievous. He's more competent than he has been on the show in a while. Because as you said, there's the real problem with General Grievous is how are we supposed to remain impressed with this guy when he just comes onto the show and loses? And the answer is you showed how to do it with Cad Bane. Yeah, like in that you don't have him lose all the time.
Yeah.
It ain't that complicated. You just don't have him lose all the time. And I know that shouldn't be that difficult to figure out, but for some people that seems to be difficult to figure out. But no, there's some good action in here. They use him relatively well, I would say. Like I think it's a pretty good use of the character. I really liked seeing him in this again and again, not being quite as pathetic as he has been recently. So that's a kind of a huge thing. And honestly, it's just a bunch of action to get us to a crash landing on a planet, which is the thing that excites me because it gets us to the deserter,
Mm-hmm.
which
Oh
is
yeah.
a ton of fun because it gets into the thing that interests me most about this show in a continuing fashion. Okay, well, what is it like being a clone trooper? You
Mm-hmm.
know, what is it like being a clone trooper? What are their values? To what extent do they have independent thought? And if I was just going by Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, I would say they are brainwashed monsters who are not capable of any thought. But this show, over and over again, shows us they all have names, they all have distinct personalities, they're all unique people. Like, every single one of them is their own purpose, to the point where one of them, like, just, oh, well, all of my buddies got killed, and I can't call for help, I might as well stay here. You know, it's like, why am I still fighting this war if everybody's dead? Like, who am I fighting for? My entire squad is dead. They're all wiped out. And here are my choices. Get killed as well, or hide under a rock somewhere. And so he goes and he hides under a rock somewhere, and the war moves on. And he's like, okay, well, does it really matter that the war moved on without me? And that's so impressive to me.
Oh yeah, this is one of the good, like genuinely great episodes that they do in the Clone Wars, where they're trying for something that's meaningful, and it is like a wholly original thing here that they're exploring for that. Like, there have been a few small stories being like individual clones with unique personalities and what have you, but they still were fairly restrained unless they were like the Arcs or the Commandos.
Right.
But here it's, wow, this is, we're seeing a lot of stuff. Plus, we're seeing an interspecies family, which is rarely represented in the actual like visual media. It's happened in the books.
Okay, I was going to ask if this is a common thing.
It's a thing that's happened in the books, and it happens for a number of species, but they
It's
don't
not
really
that
do it in the
prominent.
shows or the movies that much.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh, because you meet the kids and you're like, okay, so the dad's a clone who left. That's really interesting. Because he's got important things to say. And yes, Rex is right that if the separatists win, things could get much worse for them. That's true. But at the same time, these guys are like beet farmers. To a certain extent, it doesn't matter to them who's winning a war, because unless they decide that this is one of the planets that needs to get cracked to build a Death Star, it's probably never going to affect them.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that
Whoever
I
wins
wish
the
we saw
war,
more.
yeah. And that's an interesting idea, because we think about the importance of this war and we see the huge scope of this war, but the vast majority of the people living in this galaxy will never know or care who won that war.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh yeah.
that's an interesting idea. because it takes, like, moving it to the micro, because we're only ever watching the macro. Moving it to the micro of what it's like for people living in this world is always fascinating for me, especially when one of the guys is a guy who is supposed to be, again, brainwashed and ready to kill and die for this war. Well, no, he too can just say, actually, you know what? I will take up farming. I will have some kids. I will settle down. Why not? And I really love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And I assume stuff like this gets touched on more in the future?
Kind of. Like, you're never going to see this guy and his family again.
Well, no, of course not
We
this
do
guy.
see some smaller scale stuff every now and then. We do see some stuff where we get to actually just embrace the world and what have you. And that is one of the benefits of this TV show, is that it does, despite its many problems, manage to run long enough that they have the freedom to every now and then dip into something that's smaller scale, and often that is the stuff that does become more meaningful because it needs to. It's not going. You can't rely on big action for a thought piece about, stepping away from war.
Yeah. It's just not going to make sense. And yes, there's still a fight scene in this episode where they battle a bunch of commando robots. Have we seen the commando robots since the God? What's that wonderful episode from the first season?
Rookies.
Rookies. Thank you. Yeah. So we haven't seen the commando robots since then, but they look great. They're not my favorite robot. My favorite robot is the general robot, the guy with the box head that we see. I love that guy. Every time we see one of those general robots, I'm super happy.
You'll be glad to hear then that it's always that droid giving the orders whenever you're in the Clone Wars era on the Separatist side.
Oh, I love that robot for some
And
reason.
The sassiest lines for if you're winning or failing.
Yeah, he's so much fun. Oh, okay. Well, I will remember that because I love that guy. So yeah, and then we get from the deserter, we move on to Lightsaber Lost, which is, just a standard, what if a cop loses his gun and has to scramble to get it back episode. But it's about Ahsoka and her lightsaber, and this is the only character that could have happened to, because she's the only one who is, the only, named character we hang out with, who is reckless enough that she would be able to be pickpocketed. Like, you can't imagine that happening to any other one of these characters.
I mean, it's not like Anakin and Obi-Wan would drink, alcohol without ever considering if it was laced with something.
Okay, you make a strong point. By the way, what's the name of that pirate king? I always forget his name.
Hondo Ohnaka.
Hondo, thank you. Yeah, it's like, seriously, you can't detect that this guy is up to something? Like, I know you're not always mind readers. I know you can have a hard time getting into people's heads. They do that whole, 3-person brain scan of Cad Bane earlier. It's not always to get in people's heads, but of all people, you can't tell Hondo is trying to mess with you?
I'm Space Don Carnagia!
Of all people, this guy you can't detect. Okay, you're right, but a completely sober person being pickpocketed is a different situation than idiots having a ceremonial drink.
I have one question that I don't think I'll ever have an answer for, though. And to be clear, these guys did not exist before now. What is with the Donald Duck fish people?
Yeah, they're weird.
I don't get why they're here. Like, they don't seem to add anything, but we keep bringing them back.
Yeah, I think somebody just finds it to be a funny, character design. That might be all the thought that's going into this.
Yeah.
They're weird. Where are they from? Do we ever get, a name to one of their race to, have adventures? Or is this just, they're the favorite background alien?
I think in the comics, I do like that we see so many aliens in the show, because, humans aren't the only race active in this galaxy. It's just that humans have had a dominance since, for crying out loud, humans forced the Tong off of Coruscant and then basically have been ruling it ever since. That's why it's been so human-centric, but otherwise...
okay. So it was not originally a human planet. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, the people who would later become the Mandalorians were actually the natives to Coruscant. Mandalore isn't their home. That's their adopted home after being exiled by humanity. Which is why they hate the Republic and Coruscant so much, for the record.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Okay.
But that's not canon in this show.
Oh, okay. They've speaking of but anyway, it's a cute little episode. They've run. They have a speeder chase. She hangs out with the breath tube Jedi, who's the chillest Jedi in the world, and that's by Jedi standards. He's just
Yeah,
a very chill dude.
I don't even know if like Palpatine would ever be concerned about him. He'd be like, "Oh, just let him smoke some weed in the corner. He will be fine."
Yes, like I can't imagine a chiller Jedi than this one. He's so much fun. So I enjoyed that. There was a murder. There's people trying to steal a lightsaber. I mean, it's a fun action episode. But the whole idea that a Jedi could be pickpocket does seem a little strange. But like you said, it's not the dumbest thing a Jedi has done in this show so far. And I'm sure there's worse stuff coming.
Plus, I mean, it does actually give Ahsoka a chance to just stand on her own, which I think is part of the problem for her early on, is that they kept forcing her in. It's not just Ahsoka, it's Ahsoka and Anakin, it's Ahsoka and Obi-Wan, and so on and so forth. Whereas, no, she needs to solve these problems on her own. There's a reason that a lot of the stuff, like the Junior Jedi Knight novels and stuff like that, they tended to not have too many masters watching over the students, because they needed to actually go on their own adventures to develop as characters. Because if you have a mentor figure that you can just turn to all the time, then you don't really need to make a choice. You don't need to have agency.
And you don't need to, again, learn the hard lessons that come with making those decisions. You have to take responsibility for making a decision. You have to make a decision and then take responsibility for the outcome. And if you've got a master there, it always undercuts that. I totally get that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was very well done. And it was just nice to give her her own episode. And I'm, again, sure we're going to be seeing more of that going forward. Okay, now we move on to... I'm just, like, getting my head down and ready for 20 minutes of you yelling about stuff. The Mandalore plot.
Okay!
So here's what I understand about Mandalore from these 3 episodes. They're a planet full of people who used to be super warlike, hence the Mandalorian famous armor and their famous weapons and their dark blade from the Mandalorian Jedi, right? And then recently they stopped all of their wars with the Republic and have become super pacifists. And Obi-Wan has an ex-girlfriend who is the ruler of Mandalore. So that is what I know. They're human type creatures. They used to be super warlike. They're less super warlike now, but some people want to make Mandalore great again by having a return to their ways of violence. That is what these episodes have taught me. Why is everything about this horribly wrong and inconsistent?
Okay, first of all, the Mandalorians were aligned with the Separatists during the Clone Wars. This was established as far back as the Marvel Comics, back when we didn't know what the Clone Wars were. They actually had it set up that the Mandalorians were on that side. Not out of malice or anything. They actually, at that point, were following the Super Commando Codex by Jester Muriel, who was the leader of Mandalore at the time and died right before the start of the Clone Wars. Jango Fett was his heir apparent, but he had no money, and he didn't know that there were many else that he could actually turn to, so as a result, he kind of was stuck drifting on his own. That's how he ended up actually working and becoming, the gene template for the clone army.
As well as a famous bounty hunter.
Yeah, and after that, one of his clones actually got propped up as a figurehead by another Mandalorian who wanted to, reinstall the Mandalorian Super Commandos, and they became the Mandalorian Protectors, which was based off... You'll notice the planet Concordia that they mentioned. Yeah, that's actually Concord Dawn, which is where Jango Fett was born. Weird note about this episode, they spontaneously just say, oh yeah, we don't know where Jango Fett got that armor. He totally has nothing to do with us, which... I'm not sure if they're trying to say that the government is just making a careful denial so that they don't have to acknowledge Fett, or if they are intentionally saying, no, we're overwriting everything in Star Wars Bounty Hunter and Jango Fett Open Seasons.
So you're saying that, because I didn't know whether, is he not a Mandalorian now? Based on that, or are they lying, or have they changed the continuity? Because even I noticed how weird that was, that they're saying, who the hell knows how he got this Mandalorian armor? I'm like, isn't it because he's one of you guys, and then he left to become a bounty hunter? Like, isn't that the whole character?
Yeah, this is why the Mandalorian thing bothers me so much. Is it's not simply that they altered things; it's that they blatantly just kind of try to stomp out every other storyteller's influence on Mandalore. It's not simply a matter of, well, we thought we could do this with it, because like a pacifist faction amongst Mandalore, that's fine, but
Yeah.
the planet, the culture, who these people are, the very friggin' cultures that they're based upon is completely and utterly changed. Because old school Mandalorians were based on Mongolian culture, especially back during the time of Genghis Khan, and also Maori culture, because, that's what Tamura Morrison is,
That's why he got the part.
So, how about that? And it's like, no, actually, they're all Swedish and or British now, and they're all incredibly pale and blonde.
Yeah, that was weird. The fact that they're all super blonde.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
like, given what Tamara Morrison looks like, given what Pedro Pascal looks like, it's weird to me to watch it and like, hey, look, it's entirely Scandinavian people.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a bit much. It's a bit much. And also this weird architecture thing they have. Mandalore is they love the thrill of the hunt. They respect nature. They have this whole religion and everything about conquest and why they do the things that they do. They have gods and everything. They believe in an afterlife and souls, so they don't pave over things. They mostly lived in isolated villages and cities in specific areas, and otherwise, they're actually very respectful of their culture staying, their world staying the way it is. They leave it living and teeming with life. And then for some reason, the creative team here were like, but yeah, but what if the Republic just decided to nuke all of Mandalore? Like, all of Mandalore, not a single city. They went Hiroshima on the entire planet. So now everyone
Oh.
has to live in these biospheres.
Huh.
Yeah, and the thing is, back when this was in the same continuity as everyone else, I pitied the people at Holocron who had to figure out how that fits in the continuity. They were like, okay, we explain it as there are certain zones that were nuked. Because, again, that would make some sense. Okay, there's this one nuclear wasteland spot that just is on the planet. There are
Yeah.
so many ways to have handled this that would not have been steamrolling everyone else. And I haven't gotten to the worst part yet, for me personally. One of
Okay.
my favorite authors was forced out of the Star Wars Expanded Universe because of all the Mandalorian arcs in this TV show. They kept making her stuff non-canon to the point that she could not finish her best-selling series.
Damn. And what you're telling, I mean, the little bits you've told me already suggest that it's more interesting what they're doing, because I'm going to tell you something. Watching these episodes, I cannot tell you what the difference is between Mandalorians and the Naboo. They're just, I
Exactly.
mean, they're essentially the same thing. Oh, they've got a queen and she wants peace, but there's one group of them who's not so psyched about peace, and they all wear, they all wear these robes, and they all live in these these plaster arched cities. I'm like, it seems very generic Star Wars, The Mandalorians.
Mhm.
And you're telling me, no, 100% they got everything about Mandalore wrong. They changed every single thing about Mandalore.
There's literally only one thing that they had. Excuse me. There's two things connected together that they did not completely and utterly flip. The
Okay.
Vizslas did exist. Tar Vizsla was an antagonist who Jango Fett hunted down and actually let killed by Corellian Slicehounds, if I recall correctly, as
Ooh.
revenge for killing Jaster Muriel. And Death Watch is a thing. They were, at the time, opposed to the Super Commando Codex and all of that because they just hated what Mandalorians had become. And
Okay.
as a result, they were just in direct opposition to that. And for some reason, in this show, they're totally okay with referencing the Vizslas, even though they basically overwrote everything else with that. And now the Death Watch are the part that's associated with the Separatists, whereas originally
Oh.
they just, criff everyone. We don't like any outsiders. There's literally a word for in Mandalorian in that stands for not only stranger but outsider and outcast. Like literally all for their culture, not being Mandalorian makes you essentially be othered in pretty much every context.
Completely.
And this one is just, I don't understand what's going on here. And also, they didn't always all wear the exact same uniform armor like Boba Fett. That also was not a thing. Mandalorian armor is highly varied. It always had distinct things. The colors had meaning, and everyone had different color schemes going on. There's this whole nuance and level of expression and everything. And I do want to acknowledge they tried, because clearly someone at some point must have gotten through to them that, you kind of threw some of this out, because Rebels tries to backslide on some of this.
It's going to be very interesting when we're done this, and I make you watch the Mandalorian so we can talk about this, because I was going to say, based on my experience watching the TV show The Mandalorian, I had no idea what was going on seeing Mandalore and these people. Because The Mandalorian, I'm not going to spoil it for you because you haven't watched it yet. And I understand now, given your feelings about what they did with the story, why you haven't watched it yet. Because is it just going to be yet another dagger in your heart? I assume what you're thinking. But given the fact that the show depicts it as a religious order warrior cult, it suggests to me that they have corrected back in the direction you would prefer.
I'm hoping, but it just, at this point, it's like they just screwed up so much that I'm not.
You have no confidence, absolutely. But again, that's a conversation we'll have when you actually sit down and watch The Mandalorian. We're not going to pre-debate that.
Oh yeah, there is just one more thing I want to add. Just
Please.
It's another little knife twist, but also it has a delicious bit of irony on top of it all. So the woman that they ousted, essentially completely from Star Wars by making it so that, oh yeah, everything I've been working on you've made invalidated.
Yes.
Yeah, when they wanted tie-in novels for the Clone Wars, because it's not just a TV show. Everything else that wasn't the TV show, Disney has since thrown out. But there were comics and books, and they, unlike the TV show, they typically were handled by people who already worked in the expanded universe. So as a result, they typically were a lot more respectful. And the hilarious thing is, Karen Traviss wrote most of them.
Oh.
So as a result, she had Altesian Jedi showing up and everything. And, the people in Dark Horse doing the comics are like, and here's a nod to what happened in the aftermath thousands of years later for that Knights of the Republic comic we did and everything. And, they're actually connecting stuff together. And typically, whenever Travis did the novel, she would do a lot more work to try to differentiate the species and make everything make sense. And it just... So to this day, I'm just kind of like... I'm glad that she at least did that for those books, but also, oh my gosh, she literally was fixing things for you, and then you did what you did.
You still Nixoned her. God damn it.
Yeah, it's just like, that for me is why I'm so glad that she bounced back from that and then essentially became the godmother of the Gears of War expanded universe, because, my gosh.
I mean, it's good to know that somebody can recognize good work. That is nice to hear.
It's so utterly crazy that this happened, and I know that for some people they're not going to care because they didn't read her books or whatever and what have you, but even without all of that, I just, between all of these different Mandalorian episodes, because I realize we haven't touched on the plot that much, but, well,
it's not that important. It's a pretty standard plot, One faction wants to make sure that they can join the Separatists. The other faction wants to keep them peaceful so they don't join the Separatists. I mean, and then they have a bunch of assassins try to kill the lady. Again, they have a bunch of assassins trying to kill the lady who's trying to bring peace. Again, they've done this storyline with Padme before. Only now it's Obi-Wan's girlfriend instead of Anakin's girlfriend. So
Yeah, and I do want to say, Satine herself as a character, I do enjoy her. Her chemistry with Obi-Wan is fantastic. And nothing else, the Voyage of Temptation is on its own a standalone good episode. But I'd like to point out, you could literally do the Voyage of Temptation episode without her being a Mandalorian, and it still works.
Well, I mean, there's no reason for the planet they're dealing with here, and you make a strong point. It could be any strategically significant planet that one side wants to start dealing with the Separatists and the other side doesn't. Like, you could have done this with any planet. It didn't have to be Mandalore. The only thing that having it be Mandalore gets out of it is, A, you get the people in the badass armor, B, you get to have a guy bring out the Dark Blade, which is awesome.
No, actually, that's completely not in any other. This show just randomly came up with that. It was,
Okay.
from what I understand, based off of a random piece of concept art, which later became a bonus lightsaber crystal that wasn't ever canon in The Force Unleashed. And then they just kind of were like,
Because
okay.
I remembered it from The Force Unleashed, I thought it had some more significant value in the series, because it looked very badass in The Force Unleashed, and it looks unbelievably badass here.
Oh, it looks cool, although to this day it also kind of drives me crazy in that I'm not sure how you can make a lightsaber that's dark. That's like something out of Destiny, but okay.
That's exactly out of Destiny. Like, that's 50% of the weapons in Destiny is the Dark Blade. But it just looks great, and I'm not going to apologize for thinking it looks badass. I'm just sad that the guy with the worst joke name in all of Star Wars is the guy who's wielding it.
Oh, that reminds me.
Vizsla. Oh my god.
Yeah, Pre Vizsla, Jon Favreau, and here's the thing. You know how you said about how the Mandalorian fixes things? Yeah. Jon Favreau, who played Pre Vizsla, yeah, unlike this creative team, far as I can tell, because he said he actually did a lot of research for his role. He read up on books. He watched things. He might have even played Bounty Hunter from everything, from what I've gathered. He wanted to understand what it means to be a Mandalorian patriot. So, that's why he does such a great performance as this guy who wants to restore the old ways. And that is also, from what I understand, why so much of The Mandalorian has been trying to restore things like, hey, Beskar, Mandalorian iron, that's a thing. And
it's literally, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but Beskar is central to the plot of the entire series.
I am aware of that, and that was actually one of the things that was like, okay, good. Favreau is doing, because, like, everyone likes to credit Filoni for making that happen in The Mandalorian, but no. Far as I've been able to tell, Favreau is the member of this entire cast who put the most time into being like, I want to know what the hell it means to be a Mandalorian. Well,
it wouldn't surprise me, because Dave Filoni was in charge of all this stuff that was terrible, but Jon Favreau friggin' wrote almost all of the episodes. Well, not almost all, but most of the episodes of it himself. Because he's not just directing and creating the show, he's also writing most of the episodes.
That's good to hear. That actually makes me a lot happier, because, he was one of the few people to be like, okay, I am bringing this shit back in.
All right. Well, you know what? That stuff we will table until we actually watch The Mandalorian, but it's very interesting to me that you say that. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. And of course, we get, in my little synopsis here, we get further notes that, this episode is actually set between blank and blank. Because that happens all the time.
Oh yeah, what is continuity and timeline?
Oh my god. Alright, so let's check this. Hold on.
And for what it's worth, thank you for bearing with me in the middle of the entire Mandalorian rant. I
knew that was gonna... I mean, it's not like I didn't know this was coming. You have prepped me for this. It's 100% obvious you were gonna need to talk about the Mandalorians. That's you warned me of this beforehand, so I'm not surprised or disappointed. If anything, it's what I was hoping would happen. All right, so let's move on to Senate Murders, which is not a great episode. I mean, it's just not. There's a little bit of fun stuff in it, but it's mostly just, they're really mad at this one group of Rhodians are really mad, and it's nice that it's a follow-up to the episode about Rhodia last time, and their attempt to be neutral and stay out of it, and that there would be consequences, blah 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 blah. I feel like if your faction maybe just get him removed as ambassador, you don't actually have to murder him at a Senate function.
Yeah,
I feel like there would be a crisis of faith in his leadership, since he's the one who got everybody pulled into the war. You could just push him to retire, lady.
Yeah,
it seems like it's going a bit far, and then we get a an incompetent cop character who is drawn to look like Peter Lorre. So, thanks.
His like I'm glad you remind me because it's just I don't understand. Just like he looks more alien than some of the actual aliens.
Yeah, he's got a is he supposed to be human? Because he looks like a weird alien monster.
Yeah,
And I know that I know that he looks like a weird alien monster because he's designed to look like Looney Tunes' version of Peter Lorre from the cartoons when they would have a Peter Lorre character. But it given the art style of the rest of the show, he stands out as not fitting in at all
No,
to the regular art style.
in fact, coincidentally, he looks a lot like the Star Wars Detour character's art style. It's like they
That's
just took
true.
a character.
The slightly super deformed look that the Star Wars Detours character has. Yes,
Yeah,
I've seen
and
those.
I will say one thing in this episode's defense.
Okay.
I do like that it further establishes the Kaminoans are not on the up and up. Like, it's no really...
Yes.
They are just blood-sucking leeches, and they are profiting
Yeah.
off of this war as much as the Sith.
Yeah, they're 100% monsters. I completely get that. I was very, very interested to see how that played out, but it's like, yeah, it's weird because the Kaminoans, like, it's this thing that always bothered me from Attack of the Clones on, which is no one ever looked into the fact that a Jedi Master supposedly ordered an army of clones 10 years ago. I just love that it's like, it's at the frigging center of the plot of the entire series, and no one finds it weird that 10 years before any of this war stuff started and the Separatists started being, okay, well, I guess the Separatists started being a problem a little before the start of, they weren't Separatists, they were just the Trade Federation causing normal
Oh, no, there
blockades.
actually were Separatists who just wanted to be away from the Republic. That's one of the things.
So there were always Separatists. But the point is, there wasn't a giant army. There weren't rogue
Oh, no.
Jedi leading them. Any of that. There was just, it was just a faction. And we're expected to believe that 10, 15 years ago, some random Jedi Master was like, hey, FYI, we're going to need an army of clones. And then he mysteriously died. And then when a giant, war with robots starts, suddenly they've got 200,000 clones ready to go to help. And no one's like, kind of weird how coincidentally we had this army ready to go. And obviously the Kaminoans know what's going on, but it's weird that no other character ever finds that suspicious or looks into it at all. How convenient it was that they had an army ready to go for when the Separatists decided to do their droid army attack. Like, it's so strange. And this one lets you know, as you said, that, yeah, the Kaminoans were in on it. They were always in on it, and they're kind of shady creeps. So that was nice. They're not responsible. They're not the killers, but they are shady creeps.
They built the gun, they loaded the gun, they handed someone to the gun, they just didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
How could they have seen that coming? They were,
You could have possibly foreseen. One problem I have, though, with the political plotting around this, though, is the ridiculous idea of passing a bill to stop building more war fighting capabilities. And it's like, that's not how you negotiate a peace. You don't negotiate a peace. I'm sorry, but it's like no time in history has said, what we're going to do is we're going to preemptively put all our guns down and negotiate from a point of weakness. That's never happened in history. Like, what Padme wants makes zero sense. It's like, you cannot get a good deal if you're like, first off, we're going to get rid of all of these clones and all these tanks. Now we would like to negotiate a cessation of hostilities. And I'm like, yeah, what motive do they have? What motive do the army of robots who can't negotiate, led by an evil Jedi, what motivation have you given them to think it's a good time to sue for peace when all you've accomplished is to make it so you can't defend yourself if they decide to keep attacking? Like, what about frigging General Grievous and Darth Tyrannus, who literally has the word tyranny in his name.
And also Grievous, which is literally just Grievous.
Exactly. Exactly. Whose name is the word Grievous. Like, what about these guys makes you think that if they see a weaker foe, they'll be like, you're right, this is a time to start working towards a political solution to our differences. Their differences is they want to wipe you out. Like, that's what they want, guys. I don't know what you think you're going to accomplish by putting down your guns, but it's not going to be what you want. So yeah, that is the one part of this episode that it's like, it's nice that they're doing a murder mystery and all, but what Padme wants doesn't make a lick of sense. So yeah, that just bothered me a lot.
You're totally fine there, and
yeah, it's a problem.
It's like the political equivalent of landing at Point Rain. They try to do politics, but the politics make no sense.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, it's very frustrating. All right, so let's move on to Bounty Hunters.
Oh, and so we're just skipping Cat and Mouse?
Oh no, I forgot about Cat and Mouse. Sorry. Let's move on to Cat and Mouse. Which, you know what? I mean, I love the spider monster.
Oh, General Trench is a favorite by pretty much everyone. I know one friend who just
so much
loves
fun.
it. Well, he has the most delight. Like, it is obvious we just stuck a spider as an alien, but also they have fun with it, and not in a racist way for once.
No, like he's just the way he's got a great voice, and he laughs by making clicking sounds. And it's the best part because it's like, it's a guy who's got a good plan, and the characterization is, he's a guy who just frigging loves his job. Mm-hmm. And that makes it fun to watch him. He loves the schemes, he loves the nefarious plans, he loves, he loves feeling like he's smarter than people. Like, I just really got all the way on board with this character immediately.
Mm-hmm.
He's so much fun. And then he gets blown up by an awesome trick with a cloaked spaceship.
Oh yeah, by the way, that cloaked spaceship is, in a really weird turn, is actually a reference to the Thrawn trilogy.
Really? I don't remember that.
The ships that Thrawn picks up from the Clone Wars, they looked exactly like that design. That was their whole look. I'm blanking on their exact name, but a bunch of them looked like that, and they were this super deadly effective fleet.
Nice. I totally forgot about that. Oh, Thrawn, you're the best. And you'll always be the best. I don't care what they do to you in the future. But you'll always be the best, Thrawn. I read those books. I saw your appearances in, what do you call it? TIE Fighter. You're always going to be the best, Thrawn, and I don't care what anybody says. I'm just looking forward to when we see Rebels at some point so I can see what they do with Thrawn. Don't spoil anything.
I'm not saying a word.
A very fun action story. Like, this is a legit super fun action story. Really great to watch. The visuals are great. The schemes they pull are fun. Trench is wonderful. So he's dead after this, right? Trench is not coming back?
Oh, no, he does.
Oh, he does. Okay. Because it seems pretty significant when the bridge is blown up by 6 torpedoes. But I guess Trench managed to figure a way out of that.
As I recall, they give him some cybernetics, so...
Oh, okay. Oh my god, are you telling me he's coming back as a robot spider?
Cyborg spider, but yeah.
Well, I prefer to say robot spider, but yes. I understand that your terminology is way more accurate than mine. Alright, so yes, I'm very excited. But yeah, very fun episode. Liked that a lot. Now, Bounty Hunters, which is just the Magnificent Seven. We've all seen the Magnificent Seven. We've all seen the Three Amigos. We've all seen, what's the other remake of Magnificent Seven? A Bug's Life. Like, we've all...
You know, I never thought about that, but yeah!
Yeah, Bug's Life is also a remake of the Magnificent Seven. It's a very popular story to remake.
By the way,
so is Galaxy Quest, you know? Like, that's just, it is one of people's favorite archetypes, the Seven Samurai.
Mm-hmm.
People just love it.
For the record, I don't recall them ever having in memory of Akira Kurosawa actually at the beginning of the episode when it originally happened. That is a thing they added for Disney Plus, I think.
Nice! Well, it's so nice that they did it, because everybody loves the Seven Samurai / the Magnificent Seven.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a great story, it's fun. There's even 7 of them in case that you wanted it to be anything more than super clear. Hondo comes back and is great. He has... one of my favorite Hondo... I think my favorite Hondo moments in the entire series so far, which is, this is no longer profitable. Like, I'm not going to make any money here. This is costing too much to do. Time to go. I loved that so much. That is so that character. And yes, a reference to George Lucas's THX 1138. Did you catch that?
I have not actually gotten to see THX.
Oh, okay, well, there's a moment in THX 1138, right, where they're having for reasons I won't get into until you see it, because I don't want to spoil the movie. Some of the main characters are being chased by the authorities of this, dystopian society they live in. And at a certain point in the chase, the computer that runs that society is like, the cost-benefit analysis of continuing this chase is not worth it. Even if we were to catch these people, the cost of continuing the chase isn't worth it, so stop the chase. And I'm like, that's so great. And that is exactly what Hondo does here, and I swear it's got to be a reference to THX 1138, and that made me very happy, because, it's such a nice little callback to a George Lucas deep cut. But yeah, no, such a great scene. The bounty hunters we meet are kind of fun. Like, it's just a very good episode. You get the wonderful training montage that always happens in these episodes where they're teaching the farmers to fight for themselves. Like, it's everything you want out of a Magnificent Seven remake, all in one little 21-minute package.
I also, personally for me, I loved several of the bounty hunter designs, like the little guy with the big armor and Embo with his thing. And I'm happy to say some of them do actually reappear later on. But also, the Zabrak woman. I'm just so happy to see a Zabrak be demonstrated that is not from Dathomir for once, because that is a thing that everybody's like, oh, so Darth Maul, they're all just like Darth Maul and they come from where Darth Maul is. No, there's a place. It's called Iridonia, which, yes, I realize leads to the complication that they can be called both Zabraks and Iridonians. We all know it's a very weird clerical error.
Humans aren't called Corellians, so, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And just, the Zabraks have their own culture and society and everything. And yes, they actually have women, which is weirdly important to have demonstrated early on here because of something that they do later on in the series that I won't explain, but just...
Okay, I will keep that in mind.
I'm glad that it's like, no, really, female Zabraks exist, and they're not all from Dathomir.
Okay, so you're saying she was the same species as Darth Maul.
Yep.
I didn't get that at all, because I have been brainwashed, which is what you're complaining about, by the media, with the belief that all Darth Maul people are part of Darth Maul's cult, and so have the coloring and the scarification.
Oh yeah, no, those are just natural tattoos of the culture and everything.
Okay, so yeah, he didn't originally look like that. It is tattoos. Okay.
Oh yeah, those are straight up tattoos. The ones he has are from a specific planet I keep mentioning, Dathomir, but hers, those would just be traditional for anyone born on any kind of Zabrak colony.
Nice. Okay, well, see, I'm learning stuff about Star Wars at the same time. Thank you so much. Now let's move on to the most fun part of this entire season, by far, the Zillo Beast and the Zillo Beast Strikes Back.
Oh my gosh, just like, I'm amazed they got one episode of this, let alone two.
This is like, what if Godzilla, but Star Wars? Yep, that's exactly what happened. It was Godzilla, but Star Wars. I loved it so much. He looks so cute!
Yeah, that is the weird thing, is like, he is so toyetic, it's kind of amazing they never made a real toy.
They didn't?
No, I don't recall them ever doing it.
How do you not make a toy of this thing? He's so adorable. Wow, I would buy a Zillo playset. In a second, I would buy a Zillo playset.
Yeah, there weren't actually any Micro Machines for this era, which was really weird because you have so much material to work with.
Oh my god, so many new spaceships, so many new characters, so many new locations, and the Zillo Beast! Who's even called the Zillo Beast, lest we miss the point. In the second episode, they even bring out the electromagnetic cannons from Godzilla. Like the tanks with the giant satellite dish in front that fire electricity beams. Those are just actual designs from Godzilla that they brought into Star Wars just for this episode. Like, that is how much they want to make it clear that they're doing a Godzilla tribute episode, and I loved it. And it's like, there's cruel aliens who want to kill Godzilla, and the heroic Jedi who want to study and preserve the life of Godzilla. And they're poisoning him, and it's a nightmare, and then the Emperor wants to exploit Godzilla. Oh my god. I mean, it might not be the best episode this season. It's definitely my favorite episode this season, these two. I loved this so much. Everything about it. Now, and I have a question about the aliens from that planet. So they need the fuel for their starships, and that's why they're making a deal with the planet, and they have to get rid of the Zillabies. I get that. The aliens from this planet, were they created for this episode? Were they an existing thing?
Sebulba from the Phantom Menace.
Oh, they're Sebulbas. Right.
Yep.
Okay,
Dug.
that's why it's so familiar.
The species are called the Dug. They have actually a fairly in-depth relationship with a lot of the galaxy going on. Malastare, one of their representatives, was actually almost chosen instead of Palpatine for favorite reference.
Oh, interesting.
They mentioned that in the bit of dialogue in the Phantom Menace. It's like amongst the people, like, oh yeah, Bale. They mention erroneously they call him Bale Antilles for Alderaan, and they say someone else from Malastare are other options alongside Palpatine to be chosen as the new Chancellor.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, but I guess I forgot about Sebulba, because, he's not that important a character. But I love the look of these aliens.
Mm-hmm.
I love their design. I love their walking along on their hind arms and using their forearms to do things. Like, just such a great looking monster design. Like, these are some of my favorite of their aliens. But thank you for reminding me that it was Sebulba, because I'd totally forgotten. But yes, is there a reason to criticize this episode, or can we all just, like, enjoy this episode for what it is? Here's my biggest criticism of this episode. Dear Palpatine, I feel like there's better planets you could study this monster on than Coruscant. And I know you need him to come to Coruscant to turn it into a Godzilla episode, but it doesn't really make any sense for the character to not... Let's take him to one of our million desert research facilities on another planet. And just send the scientists to the desert research facility. I'm... Okay.
No, I think if as far as criticism, it just was like, as someone who's not a huge Godzilla fan, it was really just kind of jarringly out of nowhere. It was just like, what, okay, I guess we're stuck with a Godzilla tribute for the next 2 weeks.
2 episodes. Which, that's true.
It really throws me as to why it had to be 2 full-length episodes. I feel like you could have actually gotten a lot...
Crammed it all into one,
and focused it more, because it really does... Like I love that it brought you so much joy, and I'm glad to hear about all of that, but I get it. It really was kind of just sort of a weird moment for everybody else.
Yeah, it's a weird filler episode for everyone else. I totally get that. Like, I totally get how, for you, this would not be the amazing, like, the unbelievably amazing, like, wonderful journey that it is for me. But trust me, like, for Godzilla fans out there, this is kind of a huge deal.
Well, I'm glad
I really
for all of you.
This. But yeah, it's... you're right, but I totally understand where if you're not a Godzilla person, this is just like, I feel like they're wasting a bit of my time.
Thankfully,
so I totally get that.
Thankfully, I'm glad to hear, though, that it does actually have a positive impact for someone. I mean that genuinely. I always, even if I don't enjoy something, I want to ensure that someone else does.
Oh yeah, no, I had a great time with this one. Thumbs up to this bad boy. I loved it, and I'm not shy about saying it. It's so much fun. All right, so that's just me being blown away by a very silly episode of the show. Let's move on to the end of the season, which is the trilogy of Boba Fett episodes. He desperately wants revenge. A, he desperately wants revenge. B, no one in the world of Star Wars finds it suspicious that one cadet has a completely unapproved hairstyle. And C, there are no security cameras anywhere in Star Wars. Like, I've just come to the conclusion that the world of Star Wars is a world where no one ever invented security cameras.
Oh, there
Because
used to be in like the '90s era and everything. That was like a huge thing. Like it's funny you mentioned that. I'm playing through Jedi Knight Mysteries of the Sith right now for second look, and there's actually a whole system where you can blow up the cameras, but if you leave them intact, you can later use them to spy on your enemies and everything.
Because I was just going to say, between this episode, right, between this episode and what was the other episode, and the Senate murders,
Mm-hmm.
we would have to assume that this is a world where security cameras do not exist, even the most secure places in the entire galaxy. So it's like she walked into an office in the middle of the Senate and stabbed a guy and walked out, and there's no visual record of that happening.
Yeah, it's a thing.
No, you just have to. And the thing is, I honestly, I've just accepted it. There are no security cameras in Star Wars. Let's move on.
Really intense privacy statutes in Star Wars, kids. Really intense.
Know, right? What I really liked, though, is, like, getting a good amount of backstory and character for Boba Fett.
Yeah, fun fact. You know how I've said that the Clone Wars likes to take other people's stories and adapt them very creatively? Yeah, they're actually working just an entire, like, 7-book series of young Boba Fett novels.
Really?
Yeah, and they basically just are like, well, we're going to take the rough idea of these books, and we're going to translate them to 3 episodes of television. And by rough, I mean some of the characters involved come up, but yeah, Boba Fett was
So the character like the woman who owns Slave One.
Oh yeah, or
ship Slave One is that's all part of this world.
Yeah, Orasing is from the books. She was basically Boba Fett's surrogate mother in both timelines.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because his dad dies when he's 10. He's got to have somebody to teach him how to be a badass bounty hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And so Slave One is her ship, and that's how she gets introduced into this world.
Mm-hmm. Well,
okay.
Actually, we touched on her a little bit last time, because she did come up briefly in the first Cad Bane with the hostage.
And I just didn't understand her significance then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like, this gets close to it. They still never restore her whole being a failed Jedi to one of the most hard-ass Jedi Masters in the galaxy and what have you, but I am glad that at the very least they're like, yes, she had a significant influence on Boba Fett, and that she was more than just simply like one of the most ruthless killers in the galaxy. There were a handful of people that she did legitimately care about. And there's real significance for that in that her dad totally just walked out on her mom. He was some alien. He never came back, and that's part of the reason why she makes an effort of taking Boba Fett under her wing.
Oh, okay. So she is mixed space species as well.
Oh yeah, back in the original timeline, most people that you saw that they're close to human, but they're clearly not. Near human was the definition, because there was such a melting pot, because we know how reproduction works. It's just like there's a lot of near human for some reason.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that, like because we introduced the idea that that Twi'leks can have kids with clones. That got introduced in an earlier episode this year. I'm like, oh, so there are a lot of mixed species. There are a lot of mixed species aliens running around, including her. Okay, see, I didn't know that until that episode with the half Twi'lek kids.
Yeah, like Twi'leks are one of the most compatible races. Zeltrons are too, and there's
Which
a couple.
Which one is Zeltron, if I may ask?
Oh, Zeltrons are like the Orion's girls from Star Trek, but self-aware and a lot more empowered. Like Zeltrons, they know that they are an extremely intense, passionate people, and they've made it work for themselves. They They essentially have created. They have created the premier adult streaming thing in the Star Wars universe, which is known as Holo Fun World, and Zeltrons typically also make for very good soldiers, like tacticians in that, because if they have a thing for war, they really have a thing for war.
They are intense, passionate people, whatever their interest is in.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And they have really interesting ways that they actually relate to like social constructs and everything. It gets explored in a few books, especially the Legacy comics by Dark Horse, because the main guy's love interest is a Zeltron who they actually explore some of the unique dynamics of how they experience emotions differently than any other species does. And
That sounds really interesting.
yeah, they are
And
still canon, but they don't come up in this show, I think.
oh, okay. Well, I will remember that in case it comes back later. So let's just get into it a bit. Like the scheming on the ship is fun. You've got the and it's interesting how they've got Boba Fett exploiting the not mindlessness, but the fact that everyone is so, because these guys are all clones, because these guys are all brothers. Yes, we've had traitors. Yes, we've had a deserter, but by and large, it would never occur to these guys that any member of them could ever be up to something.
Especially a child.
None of them, especially a child, none of them are ever up to anything. They just follow orders. So the idea that they have to be worried about this child it would be ridiculous. It would not enter their head that that is something that they could have to do. So I totally get how he's able to move around completely unmolested and everyone defaults to trusting him. And all they think about him is, oh, well, he's potentially one of the best soldiers we've got. Right? And the question becomes, well, how did he become the best soldier you got? Well, he learned with people who were better at teaching than you guys are. That's the thing. Like, he's out there learning with people who have way more like, he's learning much more practically than the other clones are being taught. And I find that interesting that he is obviously significantly way better than they are. And I didn't immediately, because I'm not, by the way, I'm watching these episodes like back to back, so I didn't read the synopsis first. I didn't know it was going to be an episode about Boba Fett until he started he's obviously shifty. And I probably should have been a clue that he had the same haircut Boba Fett had in the movie. That probably should have tipped me off. But what I liked is that he's very, like, the way he's treated in the episode is just like, no, he's just another clone. He doesn't exactly fit in with the other ones, but, that's just the nature of these clones. Like, they do have differences. They do form cliques within their organization. There are some who are more friendly than others. Like, they each have their own personalities. So my first thought wasn't, oh, this is treachery. And then he starts sneaking around, and I'm like, oh, it's Boba Fett. Okay. Although, it does raise the unaddressed issue in the episode, which is, they probably killed a child to get him on that ship.
Yeah, like I said, Aura Singh, really good at being a ruthless killer otherwise. Like, yeah, she has
They did not address that in the episode, because he's very nervous about killing anyone other than Mace Windu, but it's like, well, they murdered a child to get you onto this ship, right? Boba? I can only be so concerned about your other objections.
Yeah.
But yeah, the show does gloss over it, so you can imagine that he's, like, tied up in a room with a gag in his mouth somewhere. I'm just saying, logically, given the kind of character Aura Singh is, probably a dead kid.
I mean, that sensor probe in her head is literally so that she can basically taste when someone's afraid.
Seriously?
Yeah, like, understand. She is actually nicer in this show than she was in the comics, because, like I said, she had this really hardcore Jedi Master known as the Dark Lady, who literally forgoes even having a name anymore because of how devoted she was to being a Jedi, right. And she makes Kreia in Knights of the Old Republic 2 look polite by comparison. So wow. Aura went through a lot, and she still dropped out as a Jedi, and she never really got over those anger issues. Everything that's basically happened in her throughout her life just made her angrier and angrier, and she was a monster. She was frigging terrifying for people to go up against.
And my question is, so she was just just a partner with she was a bounty hunting partner with Jango Fett, and that's why she ends up with Boba Fett?
Honestly, if I recall correctly, I didn't get to read the books myself. I did get to learn about a lot of them.
Because it's like, I'm like, how did she end up owning Slave One? Because it's like, she's the owner of Slave One, and he inherits it from her. And I'm like,
own slave. Although to be clear, there's been multiple slave ones. Like seriously,
Okay.
there's been several over the years. They even actually make note of it in one of the Legacy of the Force books. Boba Fett's thinking to himself, "I call it Slave One, but I might as well just call it Slave Five at this point. None of this is the original ship."
Okay.
Because like Aura, he's just constantly stuck in the past, which is why both of them click together very well. And I forget exactly how. Like I said, I remember reading up on it because, believe it or not, I learned about this when I was researching Dirge for a role playing campaign. Because Dirge and Fett also crossed paths in the books.
Oh.
Yeah,
Neat.
that was a big thing, and I think they even set up Grievous a little bit back when he was still a new thing with the books a bit.
Huh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal to say, but there's been a bunch of these young adult novel series. Like there's one where it's Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, another one where it's Anakin and Obi-Wan, and there's this Boba Fett one, and they're actually considered some of the better books in the old expanded universe because they had these authors who really gave a damn about making sure that they were doing a good job, and it led to some stories that people still love to this day.
Okay. It's interesting because it's a good 3-episode arc because it not only has solid action, right?
Oh yeah.
But it does a really interesting job of developing Boba Fett as a character,
Mhm.
which hasn't really been done in the Obviously, there's 100 books about Boba Fett. I recognize that. Okay, there are 100 Boba Fett books. I understand that. I don't think he is a character who has not been explored. Like, I do get it, but I'm just saying, for me, a casual Star Wars fan who just watches the movies,
Oh yeah.
right, and just watches the TV shows, it is nice to see them developing this character.
Oh,
And it's like interesting to see the journey he's going on to becoming the ruthless disintegrator that he will end up in 20 years' time.
oh yeah, and I want to be clear here. As much as I say that they did lift a bit from it, like by comparison to Mandalore, this is a lot more respectful. While they did change
Okay.
Aura's backstory and everything, regardless, it still works. It's still the essence of that book series. It still is the essence of what Boba went through, and it leads onward into further stories that I do genuinely like. The Bounty Hunters are one of the few character groups that they really consistently have a good time with on this show. For some reason, the Bounty Hunters just click a lot better than anyone else. So
It's weird that this season is called Rise of the Bounty Hunters when we really didn't get that many like there's the Cad Bane arc, there's this arc, and then there's the Magnificent Seven. We don't actually get a ton of bounty hunters this season, but you were right to say that the bounty hunters pop and have just like are the most interesting way into the world is the bounty hunters. But for a season that is called Rise of the Bounty Hunters, I was expecting more bounty hunting.
yeah, I don't know what happened there. I'm not even
Okay,
going to
it's
try.
just a marketing choice. I
Yeah,
get it.
it was someone made that call the same way that someone made a call that yes, the Jedi have their own specific kind of land speeder, and it looks like it's made to have head-on collisions.
Okay, that's true. That is 100% accurate to what we see in
It's
the
like
episode.
it's literally on screen for me right now as we're talking about that. It's like, oh my gosh, just this does
Yeah.
not seem road safe.
This is not a safe piece of technology, guys.
Oh
You
my
should be
god.
way more careful with your speeders. But yeah, no, like very good way to end the season. Good character stuff, really good world stuff. I was very happy with this as a way to wrap up the season because they ended it not on a big plot thing. They ended it on just a character study series of episodes
Mhm.
about how about how Boba Fett is developing, about how they got the whole plot line about the admiral who honestly believes that you got to go down with your ship. And I'm like, that's a very stupid thing. You have a lot of skills which would be valuable piloting another ship because
Yeah.
but it's a little note that it's like even with the Jedis are fanatic in their own way.
Mhm.
Boba Fett is a fanatic in his own way. And yes, this admiral is a fanatic in their own way. And it's like, guys, you have to negotiate away from fanaticism if you ever want to accomplish anything.
Oh yeah.
And I really like that is just this little sub theme. It's not a big part of the episode at all, but they're working to put those little themes in the episodes as well in this arc. So I thought that was very well done.
My closing thoughts as well, I want to say yes, this is around the time the show starts actually getting an idea of what can be nuanced in it. Like, there are some serious growing pains, and there's Mandalore,
Oh, God, yeah.
but besides that, there are some hints and reveals that they can do. Even the animation, like, you can see the quality of the animation go up from the beginning of the season to the end.
Yeah. Well, like last year, we had those like 3 episodes about the virus where suddenly the animation looked god awful. Like where they ran out of money and everything looks terrible for 3 episodes. I'm like, okay, guys, what happened here? But you can you're right, actively you can see the animation is good, looking better. The action scenes are visually more impressive. Like it gets better and better as the season goes on. I really liked that.
And there's also one small thing, but a very important thing to me personally that I'm glad to see that they brought back from the time. Mace Windu, I believe it's in these episodes that he mentioned it. I could swear I even heard him saying it again, but Shatterpoint is one of the most rare yet amazing in terms of storytelling potential force powers in existence. Like, you'll remember it in the micro series in how he was able to smash all those battle droids. It wasn't simply because he's that strong. Instead, Mace Windu...
he can sense whatever the weak point of, whatever the weakest point of things are and hit them, right?
Yes, and he can also see how that impacts in terms of how destiny flows. He can literally just sort of see how certain critical choices and everything are going to alter how the world is going to play out, whether or not this choice is going to lead to the ideal consequence. He can't see everything, he can't just predict every kind of future possibility, but he has enough that he can actually make a reasonable guess and influence things. And they make mention of this with him in the show, and I'm so grateful for that, because that is like one of the coolest powers that has the most potential for interesting stories, and it just...
Yeah.
I would love to see more Force powers like that. As much as I love the Force Unleashed, and they do actually bring some powers from that into the show eventually, I'm much more concerned about things like Shatterpoint, because that...
Shatterpoint, and the crazy part about Shatterpoint is how easily that would plug into a video game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a really good really good power to drop into a video game. It's like, well, if you if you focus up enough of your energy levels and get high enough, you can find any enemy's weak point and immediately kill it. And it's like, well, that's how you would do finishing moves in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
In any boss fight. Like, that's a really great idea.
Feel free to use it, Respawn.
I know. Well, no, it reminds me, there's a character in Top 10 whose power, who's just a guy, the Alan Moore wonderful comic, Top 10. About a planet made up entirely of superheroes. And one guy's ability, it's what it reminded me of when I learned about it, was that Satan talks to him, is his power, and tells him everyone's weakness. And it's like, that's a pretty good power. Because you immediately know, and the thing is, you immediately know where a person is more vulnerable, both in an emotional and a physical sense. And it's like, that reminds me of how he uses his Shatterpoint to always see the consequences of what you can do to things. You know, it's like, again, it's also like the terrible movie Next, where it's like, almost like being able to see 5 seconds into the future.
The Nicolas Cage one?
Yes, it's a terrible
movie.
movie.
Love it. It's so ridiculously goofy, but I love it.
Yeah, well, the problem with Next is that it's like, I'm sorry, government, there's no value in a power where you can see 2 minutes into the future. We're trying to find nuclear weapons. Yeah, but I can only tell you 2 minutes before they go off. What are you going to do with those 2 minutes? But yeah, anyway, no, honestly, overall a strong season. Yes, the politics were dumb. Yes, the major war fighting we saw was dumb, but we had a bunch of wonderful action-packed episodes. You might think it was a giant waste of time to do 2 episodes about Godzilla, but I sure as hell loved it. I'm not going to say you're wrong, that it was just a waste of time, but I sure as hell loved seeing Godzilla in Star Wars. But overall, I think there's a bunch of improvements over the first season. If you had an emotional involvement in Mandalore, I feel how you felt. I see how one might feel completely betrayed and disgusted by what they did to Mandalore. But if you don't have that emotional connection, and I may become more disgusted in the future, I'm a little disgusted because I've seen The Mandalorian. Right, but in the future I may have a stronger reaction, but right now I'm like, it's not that big of a deal to me. Anyway, so let's wrap up here and say, what was for me, I think it's clear that my favorite episode of the year obviously was The Deserter. Because it plays into the stuff I really care about with what they're doing with the clones, and I want to see how that proceeds. Do you have a favorite as well?
I'm trying to think because, I mean, we obviously know which one I liked the least.
Yep. No, we don't have to do your least favorite. You've been very clear about the Mandalore trilogies.
Oh no, Landing at Point Range still drives me more buggered.
Really?
I'm
surprised that it's even worse than the Mandalore trilogy.
The Mandalore trilogy bugs me because of reasons that only someone who is super concerned.
Just as an episode, Landing at Point Range. Okay.
Yeah. As an episode, Landing at Point Range is just
the dumbest.
Yeah, it is. Thankfully, it is the lowest the show ever gets, so it's only upwards from here. You never see Landing at Point Range get hit again. But yeah, that is like, if I didn't know everything I knew about the Mandalorians, I probably would just thought it's a decent generic arc.
Yeah.
But
that's pretty bad.
I'm trying to think though in terms of ones I like the most, because like The Deserter is very good. I like that a lot, and as I said, Voyage of Temptation as a standalone episode actually works very well. Like none of my issues with the Mandalorian retcons really comes up there. And it has a lot of fun there, too. Especially right there at the end where it's like, who will brand themselves a cold killer? And then Anakin's just like, hey, guys, what's going on?
That's a lot of fun, actually.
Oh, my gosh. But
that's a ton of fun. I'm not going to lie.
I do also just really like the Boba Fett trilogy. Like, I can't really pick one out because they all knit together.
No, I mean, anytime we're talking about an arc, you can just say the arc.
Yeah, I would say I like that they actually took what someone made and they adapted it respectfully, properly, and they made it accessible for everyone to be able to experience that. That is what you should do when you're adapting something, and also, I just love that, we get Boba Fett to be a real person in this show. And that was one of the biggest surprises that, Boba Fett's just going to come up every now and then, and he actually has an evolving arc where we see him becoming a worse and worse person, but also still trying to not be horribly awful.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it's like, it's his journey to be becoming as bad as he thinks the people he hates are. And like that is this journey that the character goes through as he gets worse and worse over these episodes, and I'm interested to see how that plays out over the course of the series because I'm sure it will. All right, so we're going to be back here soon. I mean, he's already seen the episodes, and whether he watches them or not, he knows them really well. So once I've seen the rest of the episodes, we're going to be talking season 3. I've only watched the first episode of it so far. But once we've seen the rest of the episodes, we're going to be back here for season 3. But until then, is there some stuff you'd like to recommend people check out?
Oh, yes. Well, coincidentally, Second Look right now on The Escapist kind of sort of has this whole Star Wars month thing going on, where coincidentally we're talking actually about Mandalorians and how Star Wars Bounty Hunter was basically the Mandalorian before the Mandalorian existed. And all sorts of fun stuff like that. And Empire War Forces of Corruption, Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens, which is better than the movie it's based on, because that somehow happened, and just all kinds of fun stuff there. And also on Unabridged Gamer, there's, as of this recording, I am editing a video that I have been waiting for a while to, and actually Hidden Object Guru helped edit the script on, and I'm very excited to finally see it coming to the channel because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's a very exciting look at one of the most interesting games of the past few years. And of course, the other most interesting game of the past few years is LX, which is what you've been watching being played this whole time. We will see you back here for more Clone Wars in the next item on the playlist. But until then, I'm going to say that's right. Au revoir.
Good day.